in the future,
Ella.
we spoke to Isabel.
We did speak to Isabel.
So we spoke to Isabel.
She's from
Isabel
UNSW.
Kingsley. Yeah, she's from UNSW. She's
Doing a
some
PhD.
Cool, yeah, she's doing some cool shit.
Which a lot of other people are doing.
Yeah, heaps of PhDs that no one know about. So yeah, she's like, so she's trying to see where people stand on the whole fucking science isn't perfect. So she apparently she measured scientific literacy. So whatever that means, we will find that out. She
True.
measured scientific literacy after and before a conference.
Before an event.
It was a museum.
It was in a museum, and I think it was scientists like showing their work, showing their research. You know.
It was a lecture form, I think.
Yeah.
Some sort of I'm telling you stuff. And she measured scientific literacy before and after. And she found that it went down.
She found that scientific literacy went down after the event.
How much we don't know.
Nice.
Yeah. How much we don't know. It seems like it's marginal. And I'm sure we'll find that out. But
she thinks the whole learning of science could be wrong. We could be doing it
just
a lot
the way
better.
we convey
our ideas, what we've learnt, and what's to come in the future.
Yeah.
You know, we could be doing it differently. I don't know. She'll give her own.
And how do you define what's a science person and what's not a science person? She'll elaborate on that, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Which even that has a certain art form to it. Like, how do you?
There's no defining. There's no true definition.
Yeah.
It's just it's a blurred. But
it's like you're going into something that you don't know much about, scientific stuff. You're learning about it. Are you aware of the frailties of that science? And whose fault is it? Is it the person delivering the info? Is it the person listening to the info? Or is it the language
that's being used to communicate the information?
There's like so many filters affecting the data. So yeah, it'll be exciting. So I hope you enjoy
this
the
podcast
chat we had with Isabel.
Yeah.
And just bear in mind, it's the first one,
proper
one we filmed.
There are a few Cookers transitions.
Yeah, there's a few bridges throughout that we had to edit. But she says some cool shit. And it's.
Hope you enjoy listening.
Yeah.
How are ya?
Usman Kawaja.
All right. So, where do we start?
I mean, let's just start by trying to define what scientific literacy is.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, like,
sure.
Maybe just explain what you are actually doing.
What I'm doing.
Oh, is that?
So
are we going too far?
That might be too quick.
Yeah, okay.
Let's just step this out.
Step back. Start from the beginning.
Like, so you're measuring scientific literacy before and after a scientific conference.
That was one thing.
Yeah. So let's just start with that. So how do you measure scientific literacy?
Well, to know how to measure it, you have to kind of define it, right?
Yeah.
But we've been trying to define it for over 100 years. And we still can't define it. There's you type in scientific literacy and a whole bunch of different definitions are going to pop up. But I guess it kind of started to become a thing in the 1930s, so over 100 years ago. But it's kind of evolved through what society thinks is important at the time. So at first it was, knowing about science was an intellectual and cultural, you were cultured, you were learned if you knew about science. And so scientific literacy was more about those scientific habits of mind. So being curious or, being able to reason and logically reason, those kinds of being critical about things, being self-critical, those kinds of scientific habits of mind. That's what, the term scientific literacy didn't exist. So it wasn't synonymous
with actually knowing stuff.
No, that came later. Okay. So after World War I, when, the atomic bombs and even when the Soviet Union surprised America with Sputnik and America was kind of like, oh my gosh, we've got a problem. Our science education isn't good enough. what are we going to do? Oh, we need more knowledge. We need more understanding. And so that's when scientific literacy, the actual term started coming out. And it was about knowing facts and understanding how science is done. And it wasn't until like in the 80s that I guess the current idea of scientific literacy, that you need the knowledge of facts and the understanding of how it's done, but also being able to apply that to life and to make informed decisions for yourself, but also for democratic purposes, because in the 80s that was the focus, democracy, and knowing science for democracy, and that's kind of stayed with us. So that is still now the general sense of scientific literacy, is being able to use the knowledge and understanding of science to make informed, evidence-based decisions for yourself and society.
And would you say scientific literacy is going up or down?
Well, it's actually on a plateau.
Yeah.
So, like when they first started testing, I mean, the U.S. was the first to kind of test scientific literacy through the National Science Board. They do a survey every year, every couple years. And at first, when they started doing it, the percentage of people who were scientifically literate in America was about 10%. Yep. And then in the 80s, it went to, sorry, not in the 80s, in 2008 or something. It went up to like 28%, and it stayed there. So essentially,
do you trust
28%.
Do you trust their definition of scientific literacy?
Well,
how do they even define that?
Yeah, so this is how they measure it. So when we talk about, how do you measure scientific literacy, this is how they do it. And to be honest, I think there might be better ways, but we'll get to that. So they ask people factual questions, about stuff like DNA, or for example, one of the questions is, how many days does it take for the Earth to go around the sun? Mm-hmm. A lot of people say 1 day. So,
nice. I love it.
But
I love it.
But
the sun goes around us.
But some people, I mean, you kind of know, but you don't. You're confused, and if science isn't your thing, you probably learned it and you forgot. So science knowledge questions. Then they also have science inquiry questions. And those are based around, so they have some probability questions. So for example, they'll ask if you've got a certain disease in your genes, and 1 out of 4 of your children can get it. If you've got 3 children, if you have a 4th one, what's the probability of that? Those kinds of questions. But they also ask this really interesting question. They get people to explain what studying something scientifically means. And that's an open-ended question. So people just kind of say what they think it means to study something scientifically. And generally, people don't do very well on that question.
I don't think I do very well.
And I don't blame them. I mean, when I first read about that, I thought, well, what a weird question to ask. And especially to ask people who are not scientists. But that's essentially the measure we've been going off for years and years and years, since probably the 70s.
Wow.
Just asking people what do they think scientific.
No, but like all those questions.
Oh, okay, and that was
all of that. So there's the knowledge questions, there's the probability questions, there's that question, and then there's questions about pseudoscience too. So
see if they can understand the bullshit from the.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. All right. So do you use that same definition in your studies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is. So I've looked at. So the National Science Board. That's the definition they use.
Yeah.
In Australia, when we did a scientific literacy survey in 2013, that's the kind of the definition and the same questions that we used. And for the PISA studies, the studies worldwide where they assess 15-year-old students, they use the same
from the national
definition. Yep.
One big chunk.
Yeah. So even though there's heaps of different definitions, essentially you can boil them down to those three things, and so that is the definition that I'm using.
Is the general definition, does it have its own questions or a database of questions you can choose from to then test that theory, or is it preset? There's
a database of questions. So if you want to be able to do something and compare it to other people's, it's a good idea to use the same questions. Yeah. There's a problem with that though. If you're always using the same questions, I mean, I was chatting to someone the other day and I said, yeah, but I really don't know if asking someone how many days it takes the Earth to go around the sun, if they don't know that they don't know anything else. I mean,
yeah.
So
people know different things.
Yeah. I think there must be a better way of figuring, of testing, of measuring scientific literacy. But we've just been using that same measure for years because we can go back and compare it.
Like essentially you're freaking out about, not freaking out, but like you're
I may be freaking out.
It's like if you can't use the whole of science to test scientific literacy, you're using a fraction of science, and then which fraction of science will be the best at describing someone's scientific literacy?
Yeah.
Or can you maybe you can't use anything in science to describe scientific literacy. You've got to measure the mechanisms they use to make scientific conclusions, like the cognitive mechanisms they use.
Right, exactly. So what I think, there's those three dimensions in the definition, right? There's knowledge, understanding, and applying that knowledge to make decisions. And, for me, my whole thesis, my PhD thesis is my theory is that the understanding of how science works and how science is done, the processes, that is the heart of scientific literacy. You may or may not know the knowledge questions that they ask in that specific test.
But you might be able to work it out.
But if you understand how science is done, and what I mean by that is that science is tentative. We can never prove anything. That science is uncertain. That science evolves with time, and that you build that knowledge over time. That science is based, is related to society and culture, and so therefore it's not as objective as we think it is.
Yeah.
It is a human endeavor, and it's subjective.
Of course.
If you know all that, then I think that you can use that knowledge to make informed decisions and think critically about science-related matters. But that's not where the emphasis is.
Yeah.
And in schools, in education, formal education, from primary to university, that's also not the emphasis. We teach young people knowledge. This is what you need to know. Learn it. Now give it back to me on a test.
Yeah.
Great, you did it. You remembered it.
Awesome.
How much
next year?
When do you think?
That's right.
How far would you say, or would you say at all, that knowledge or aptitude is measured on regurgitating information from a database of facts or things, and how much of it is actually applying mechanisms that people use to deduce those facts that you've learned to different problems? How is that? Does that happen?
Very little.
Okay.
So it happens, and there are some teachers who I mean, when you look at the curriculum, it looks like it happens a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the curriculum pushes scientific inquiry in the syllabus, New South Wales syllabus or the Australian curriculum, but really, it's all about the knowledge, and young people don't actually get to do science, like really get to do science and experience what research is until, I mean, they don't even do it in university. I think that once you start doing postgrad or your honors year is like, oh, that's what science is. This is what research is. You never get that experience. You might get hands-on activities and people confuse hands-on activities with actually doing inquiry.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the problem lies. And that's my focus.
Where does memory inspired production of literacy or science experiments, like when do we stop? When does a graduate, or is it a postgraduate, or is it a master's student, when does that level of rote learning from memory, or not rote learning, but like your inquiry is deduced from memory versus actually using tools of inquiry to then deduce your own things, when does that stop? Do PhD students, you'd safely say 90% of them inquire on their own, or like who's actually purely inquiring?
I'd say, I mean, you might start properly inquiring in your honors year, maybe.
And what's stopping you from doing that before that?
There's no task that they give you that leads you to inquire.
That's not, yeah.
It's all given to you.
That's right. There's no, that's not the learning opportunities that you get. The education system isn't set up that way. Actually, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but someone was comparing science education to baseball.
Okay.
And they essentially said, I thought that was just spot on. They said, in primary school, we teach kids how to, and the rules of baseball, basically. This is the rules of baseball. This is the history of baseball. This is how baseball works.
You need history, otherwise how are you going to run?
Yeah. Then in high school, you kind of reproduce famous baseball plays by famous baseball players. And in university, and I think only in late university, do you actually get to play baseball. Now we wonder, why doesn't anyone know how to play baseball? Well, because they've never done it.
No one plays.
So we need to reverse that. And I really think, if young kids in primary school really truly get to do science, then
just a habit.
We're going to, get a population that's a lot more scientifically literate.
It's like the Romans. The Romans didn't care if you knew it; they cared if you could do it. So their strength came from repetition. So practicing their moves, let's stay in a square or a triangle, whatever they did.
That works in some cases.
Yeah, now, if you do something 100 times, you're not going to be the worst at it.
Now in the 21st century, we can't just keep repeating. Like
I don't mean repeating as in repeating So I'm talking about actually doing the action, not just learning about it. The Romans didn't learn about how to be a good military person. They were actually physically every day redoing their exercises, so they were good at it. And if we get kids to do, instead of telling the kids, oh, this is what scientists do when you get to 40 years old, if you tell them, do this, they'll actually start thinking like a scientist instead of just learning about a scientist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said it right there. Thinking like a scientist. People don't get that opportunity to actually think like a scientist. But those are the skills that you need to make informed decisions about your life, about things, democratic decisions. But we just don't give them those opportunities to develop those skills.
So if you could change the system, what would you be
That's
doing?
my dream.
What would your ideal change be?
What would you do tomorrow?
You're head of the Department of Education now.
Probably have to go to a meeting.
There's actually this book called Make Just One Change. And I can't for the life of me remember who wrote it.
Oh,
It's all right.
I don't even remember what my titles
I'm so
are.
sorry.
Lucky we got the internet.
But that just one change is get young people in schools to ask their own questions.
Yeah.
Do you know, we don't give them an opportunity to ask questions. We ask them the questions.
Instead
and
of asking
then
to go to the toilet.
Say,
Yeah.
that's the only question they know how to ask.
So would you say that would come from giving them a bit more, like throwing them in the deep end a little bit? Throwing them in the deep end saying, oh.
So
okay.
Ari's boss is doing to him at work, apparently.
Yeah.
Swim.
I'm an intern managing 2 other interns.
Right.
Go
Right.
figure.
Well,
and they're like, yeah, we didn't want to give you a lot of information on how to manage it. We just wanted to see what you would do.
Well, that's code
Like,
for.
okay.
That's
Well,
code
then
for.
that's good.
Yeah, no, that's very good. It's very
that's
good.
how you learn.
Of course.
Get pushed in the deep end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's allowing, it's shifting from, a teacher-driven style of learning to a student-centered, student-driven style of learning.
Too many conductors.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I think that teachers should be seen. We should change the name from teacher to facilitator
Yes.
or mentor.
Yes.
So it's about allowing young people to go, oh, I wonder what would happen if this, or I wonder if there was ever life on Mars. Well, let's
Let's look.
let's look, and how would you look? And
Excursion.
instead of
SpaceX, baby.
but instead of us always asking them the question, so how far away from Earth is Mars? Well, like, who cares? I mean, it's important, but why not find out how far Mars is? Because you genuinely have a compelling reason to find out, because you've got this question that you want to answer yourself.
Yeah. You just got to throw them big questions, and then there's all these little questions to get to that bigger question.
Yeah.
And then also, like, when they've got that first question, they could lead themselves on a different path.
Absolutely. And that kind of big question is called a driving question. And in project-based learning, which is a progressive kind of constructivist style of teaching that I love and that I think, it's slowly taking hold in schools, but teachers are a little bit scared of it because, one, they haven't been trained in using it, but two, it requires them to be facilitators.
You can't control the output of the grades.
It's a bit hard. Yeah. But this thing of a driving question is kind of putting something out there that you can't Google the answer. There is no answer. We don't know, and that's the thing in science. We don't know.
Yeah.
But most people think science has all the answers.
There's
so much we don't know.
There's people that think they know nothing, and there's people that think they know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no. I think we got to start. People got to start thinking that scientists doing a theory, working on a theory, is just like a musician working on a musical. Like, you don't know what's going to come out, you don't know how it's going to come out, you don't know why it's going to be good or bad, but you got to be able to listen to it and make your own decision.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and some of the best discoveries were actually accidents.
Exactly.
They were unexpected. Yeah.
So you started doing this. So I want to ask you about your findings when it comes to school, but you can't because that's going to happen in December this year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you got your, so you've created a survey. You started with a survey that measures scientific literacy, and so you started in a museum, but actually, first of all, how do you determine whether someone's scientific or just a normal member of the public?
I ask them some questions, and one of the questions is, do you work in the area of science and technology? Yes or no? And also I ask if, their level of education and their level of science education. So if someone has, a university degree in science, that doesn't necessarily make them a scientist.
No.
But I know that, their level of understanding and knowledge of science might be a little bit higher than someone who's didn't touch it in university or didn't go to university. And then if someone says, oh, I have a postdoc in science, well, that helps me kind of gauge where people are.
So is there a number system, or it's just like words? Or do you try to quantify the scientific literacy?
You're trying to rank
if there's
so how do I figure it out? So I have these demographic questions, right? How old are you? Your gender, all that, level of science education. But then I ask them questions about how science is done. And I have a few ways. So there's a few instruments, or I'll call them instruments out there, surveys, where they've been developed, tested, and validated by experts in the field. And these questions are essentially designed to figure out if someone knows that science is tentative, or that science is influenced by culture, or that there isn't just one scientific method, but that there's different ways. So it's a bunch of questions basically that ask you to, not questions, actually statements that ask you to agree or disagree with them. Yeah. So for example, one of the questions is, or statements is, two scientists making observations will make exactly the same observations because observations are facts. Agree or disagree? On a scale of 1 to 5, right?
Yeah.
Now observations aren't facts. They're, observations. Two people can make very different observations about the same thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of, those series of statements and the responses to those statements kind of help me
definitely
see how much someone knows about how science is done. I also ask, please describe what you think it means to study something scientifically. Only because then I can compare it to other studies. Yeah. So that's how I measure scientific literacy.
You're happy with the amount of people that get through those questions. The people that get through those questions, you will happily be able to decipher between which ones I deem as scientific people and which ones I deem as public people. But I'm sure some people slip through that filter. Yeah. But the majority, you're it's good. It separates them.
Yeah, okay. It definitely does. And interestingly, when I first did this, about a year and a half ago or something, the audience, I was asking people who were coming to a science event at the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney. And a lot of them, not surprisingly, had studied science in university, were in science and technology related jobs, had high interest in science. And so then, obviously, their understanding of how science is done was pretty good.
Okay.
It should be pretty good.
You'd hope so.
Yeah. The thing, though, is that a lot of these science communication events that we put on is to increase interest in people towards science and to increase their understanding of science and how science works, increase their scientific literacy, right?
Do you think these people putting on the museum shows, do you think their driver is to educate people or make money, or what's...
a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it is to educate people.
So they care about that.
They do care about that, and that's one of the biggest reasons why the museum's there.
That's probably why you went in there as well. They wouldn't have let you in there if they didn't care about.
And that was my role.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's to get, in museums live off. I'm doing the quotes here. Attendance. And so being able, because that's how
unis.
We get funding.
Exactly.
So funding is linked to attendance. And so that's one of the big drivers as well. So, there are competing, I don't know if they're really competing interests.
There should be like an intrinsic interest, we shouldn't have to, promote it. There should be that already willingness to go to these things to learn. Yeah, how short are our attention
Yeah,
spans?
they're short. They're really short now. I've noticed a change in myself.
Yeah, yeah,
Me
yeah.
too.
Right.
Me too.
Just scroll through and go, nah, too
Over.
long. Can't
Exactly.
be bothered.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, when did that happen?
Yeah. That loopity, that probably started with the Vines.
Vines,
15
the
seconds.
Vines.
They would, yeah. It's so hard
Snapchats.
because even
Yeah.
some of the Vines were like 30 seconds, and you'd think they were long, and then
Yeah.
you go to check the duration, it would say 30 seconds, and you just freak out, and then you just start contemplating your life and where you're heading.
If I can't concentrate for 30
Oh
seconds,
my,
Yeah,
how am I going to concentrate on the whole
so
day?
bad,
I know.
so bad.
That's a problem too, though.
Yeah, concentration.
We don't want to spend the time to sit down and learn things properly.
Yeah, half the time
that's-
success is allocation of concentration.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mhm.
Nothing's that hard.
Nah. You just
Like-
gotta set the time to do
But
it.
yeah, you
and
need
do it
dopamine.
properly.
It's all dopamine.
Yeah.
But you have to have that intrinsic, compelling reason to want to do
Exactly. Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, you need that. Yeah, exactly. You need a story. You need your own story that makes you care about the thing you're about to read about.
Mm.
Exactly, and that's why that would be the one change that I would make to education
More
would be
science stories.
to get young people to ask their own questions, because if the question comes from them,
Mm.
they're gonna want to know.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Exactly.
want to figure it out.
Exactly.
And I saw amazing evidence of that when I was working for the Mars Lab, which is it's an education program that basically gets young people in schools to plan and conduct investigations on Mars, but on a recreation of the surface of Mars, because we can't actually get them to do stuff on Mars. So at the Powerhouse Museum, they recreated the surface of Mars, and they had rovers a little bit similar to Curiosity.
What's Curiosity?
Oh, sorry. So Curiosity is the rover that's on Mars currently, the NASA
Cool, right?
rover. Yeah, yeah. So we had rovers that were similar to that.
Yep.
The students back in their classroom could control through the internet, like just open up the laptop, log in, control the robot, drive it around Mars, recreation of
Yeah.
Mars, and use the instruments to conduct investigations to find out, what
That's cool.
the soil and the rock compositions were, and all those kinds of things, to see if it could have been habitable for life in the past or in present future. So, but they got to ask the questions that they wanted to find out.
Yeah. Because they had the raw data.
That's right. So it was really impressive to see. I mean, the students that I worked with were in year 9. And the stuff, I mean, their experiments, when they get the data back, it's real data from Curiosity. It's crazy. I think it was like 13,000 lines of data on an Excel spreadsheet that they get, that they then need to map on a spectral chart.
Yeah.
And then analyze that chart based on a spectral library to be able to kind of determine
Reference
what
points.
the kinds of chemicals were in the rocks that they had sampled. And then kind of interpret that and make a report, and then present it to actual scientists and defend their own research.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
They did so well. They did university level work in year 9. And I asked the teachers, have you ever, are they just really amazing kids in your class? And she said, nah, they just really wanted to do well. And they were genuinely interested.
Yeah.
So what happens
That's
if we
cool.
took them to Mars?
Yeah, I know.
Right?
That's their next step. They'll definitely want to go.
Oh.
They're waiting for Elon Musk to
Yeah, he's
get
going to
That's
get him
right.
there. Get him there, bro.
Yeah.
Get him there. Falcon 10?
10 years.
Probably.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll definitely get there.
In our lifetime.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see the Earth curve with our eyes at least.
Yeah.
Easily.
I hope so.
Yeah. Hope so. I want to see it. I want to see the whole thing.
Do you know, I think it would be so useful to send politicians up to the ISS, the International Space Station. I mean, every astronaut that I've ever spoken to or heard talk say that seeing the Earth from above has changed their perspective.
Yeah.
How amazing would it be to send our politicians up there?
They're probably on the phones and busy anyway. They wouldn't even see it.
No.
Close the blinds,
I mean,
Rita.
there's no borders when you're looking at it from above.
and that,
or, you know, all this stuff that we
And that
fret
rivers-
over is just,
It's
Yeah.
Not, it's not.
it
Yeah,
puts
that
it all
river.
in perspective.
Exactly.
That river isn't owned by anyone when you're up in space.
Yeah.
But you're like, we're just this one planet
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the middle of this.
Maybe we should send Trump up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trumpy.
So, you know, being in science communication, I look at Donald Trump and I go,
Motherfucker.
he's a good communicator.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing,
Oh, yeah.
but I think everything he does, even though it looks like he's just vomiting all this stuff, it's
calculated.
clever.
There's a method to the madness.
calculated.
Trumpy.
If you're not choking on your chips. Yeah.
All right, so I was gonna ask. What was I gonna say? So your
gonna have an
actual
emergency.
thesis
Yeah.
is what is it? What exactly are you doing? Like, so obviously you've done those surveys, and actually, yeah, I'll let you explain.
So, I guess this is like 3-minute thesis.
Yeah.
Explain in 3 minutes.
No, take as much time.
Take literally.
No, so I'm looking at science communication. How science, the enterprise of science, communicates with, I'm going to call them publics instead of the public, because the public implies that everyone who's not a scientist is all the same. And there's different.
Yeah.
And you know, how we communicate to those publics, right? And essentially the central objective at the heart of that is scientific literacy.
Yeah.
Pretty much anywhere in the world. I mean, when governments fund science communication efforts and initiatives, or even just things like National Science Week here in Australia, at the core of that is we want to increase interest and understanding and knowledge of science.
Yeah.
So that we're just better citizens.
Yeah.
And I think that the way we're doing it is not working. Because what we're doing most of the time is, so science communication kind of exists on a spectrum where you get what they call the deficit model on one end of the spectrum, and the deficit model kind of sees people as empty vessels that, you know, need their heads filled with knowledge.
Yep.
It's the same thing in schools.
Yeah.
Kids are empty vessels you need to fill with knowledge.
Sponge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give them more information and then they'll, you know all this stuff. On the other end of the spectrum is engaging people in science by doing science. Citizen science projects are an example where people get to work with scientists to work on a stream project where this stream is polluted, and we're going to do these studies to find out like how we can make it better, for example.
Yeah.
So everyone can work on that.
Yeah.
Anyone.
That's right.
Anyone,
Are they
citizen
happening?
scientists, citizen science projects are massive.
In Australia?
There's heaps in Australia. For example, one of them is called Fireballs in the Sky. It operates out of Perth, and basically you download this app on your phone, and if you ever see a fireball, you pull out your app. If you're fast enough, you can take a photo or whatever. But otherwise, you just open up your app and you kind of like go through all these questions that say like, what direction was it in? did it look like this? Did it look like a ball? Did it look like a streak? And so you kind of send that information through, and so you're kind of being a scientist.
Data collection.
And it's going into this database
pretty
to
cool.
help scientists then go in and find those meteorites or whatever, right?
So being a part of it makes you more involved
That's
in
right.
the future.
That's right. So this spectrum of from deficit to being involved, most of the initiatives in science communication happen over on the deficit side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But we expect that to produce scientifically literate people. And I don't think that's ever going to happen. And so my thesis, well, that's more than 3 minutes. My thesis is basically testing what is happening. So are people getting anything out of these events? So I test them before and after they go to an event to see if there's any change.
And
And
But what are these
well,
events? These events are
Yeah.
scientific events.
yeah. So for example, an event can be anything from a lecture at a museum to
Your dad,
Eh.
3 beers in, giving you a lecture on the economy.
yes. I don't know, like a stargazing night at the observatory, or a family hands-on like fun event at
maybe Richard Dawkins at the Enmore Theatre, I think on Sunday. He's at the Enmore Theatre, Richard Dawkins.
Really?
He always comes.
That splendid music, the coming in music, the Elephant March from Aida, is the music I've chosen for my funeral. And you can see why. It's triumphal.
So yeah, so you've given these. So there's some data source of science that
Yeah, some
people are
event.
interacting with.
Yeah. So,
Um,
for example, National Science
yeah.
Week. Like,
Yeah.
there are usually in Sydney almost 200 events during National Science Week, from talks, interactive activities, stargazing nights, you
When is
name it.
National
Like,
Science Week?
Taronga Zoo puts on stuff with animals, and so all kinds of.
So you've got to
science
make
stuff.
that survey unique to each event to measure the literacy around that thing.
before and after. Do you have to
Right.
make it unique?
No.
So you
That's
can do
beautiful.
it. That's wow.
Yeah.
Is this the survey or is this the second digital thing you're doing?
No, this is the survey.
Oh,
yeah.
it's general.
It's general, and
Wow.
the reason for that is because, like I said, at the core of all of these is the same central
Yeah.
goal. So I'm measuring, because people out there claim, oh, if we do this, it'll lead to scientific literacy, and I'm thinking, actually, no, it's not.
It's not, you idiot.
It's not. But no one's measured it before, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to measure it. I think
cool.
that there will be no difference.
So this isn't even just school. This is even museums that people are going in there. You're measuring scientific literacy. And It's
Yeah.
going down.
Well, that's what I found in my first
no.
study. And the worst part is,
Are you confident that it wasn't?
they were
like,
my events that I organized.
Oh no!
You know what I was doing?
Oh, what?
I was, putting on, for example, a lecture. They're great.
Sometimes.
But what are we
honest.
doing? There's a person at the front standing in front of a room of 300 people telling them interesting facts. Facts. Again, air quotes.
Yeah.
Interesting facts about their research.
Yeah.
How much is that doing
Yeah.
to improve scientific literacy, especially understanding how science works? We never talk about the process. We only talk about the end product. This is what I found, and this is how it relates to everyday life.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Tell me about the whole process of that
What's in
and
the
how
box?
you do
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And hopefully involve me in it, and then I might actually get it.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that. So that's
So
why the
you're-
events that I organized actually saw a decrease in understanding of how
Marginal
science works.
decrease,
A very slight,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, some of the decreases in some of the items in my survey were statistically significant.
Yep.
Overall, it was just a slight decrease.
Do you think if you change the go, would it be smaller? Do you think it'll be more? Do you think it'll be more?
Jesus Christ.
Do you think what's actually happening is they're getting less scientifically literate than your survey can pick up? That was hard.
There's two answers to that. One, I think that these events, especially where we get someone in front of an audience to kind of talk about the findings and products of science, they reinforce the misconceptions.
Okay, yeah.
So they reinforce that everything in science is a fact, or that it's absolute and always done in the same way. It's reinforcing those. So I think that's what I found, was that it was reinforcing misconceptions that were kind of maybe already there, but reinforcing them a little bit.
Right.
But the second part to that, to your question, I've been looking for a different way to measure this, because I don't think surveys are the best way. I mean, is giving a kid in school a multiple choice test the best way to find out if that kid learned something?
Doubt it.
No.
No way.
So is a survey the best way to find out if someone learned something at a science event? No.
Yeah.
That is the only thing that we have now. But I mean, we were talking earlier before we started, and I mentioned I would love to be able to download what's in people's brains, right? I can't do that. I can't do that yet anyway. Download what's in people's brains so we can see what they know and how they know it and what they learned. But I've developed this new way of measuring that uses concept maps. Now, a concept map is basically you can draw what you know. So our knowledge, when we gain new knowledge, our knowledge is organized in our brains by linking concepts to each other. So sky and blue are linked together. So everything that we know is kind of linked in this network.
Yeah.
And when we gain new knowledge, this becomes more complex.
For sure.
And also becomes more valid. We might have things in our knowledge that are not correct, but the more we know, the more we kind of correct those errors. So a concept map is basically it looks a little bit like a mind map that you do when you're brainstorming.
It's very hard to draw. I've tried this, and it's quite hard to put it on a 2D. Map. If you could do it 3D, it'd be awesome.
I know. Oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah.
So I get people to digitally make a concept map using these concepts of science and how science works, and put them together to show me how they think about how science is done.
Are those concepts? They're given those concepts. Okay.
Yes.
So
And then they've got to map them basically and link them.
And link them together.
That's nice.
Yeah. And so basically what you should see
Wow.
is, because I do this before and after a science experience,
Yeah.
you should see that the validity or the correctness of the concept map improves after, you should,
Yeah.
and becomes more complex after, if they've learned something. I'm still testing
And this
this
concept map's
instrument.
different to the survey, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you define the interconnectivity of the subjects?
So using these existing instruments or surveys that are out there, and the heaps of research on this topic of how science works, I've come up with keywords, those concepts, and then linking words. Some are correct and some are incorrect. And so the algorithm in the back of this digital tool basically assesses the validity or the correct or incorrectness of the links that people put together,
Yeah.
and also kind of scores the complexity and spits out a score that tells you how, like, where on the scientific literacy spectrum you are.
Is it? Can you give us an example, or is it top secret of the like a joining word and?
Oh yeah. So for example, yeah, totally. So
I'll have to kill you.
You could, well, just a simple one that we've been talking about, scientific process, and it could be a concept, and then the concept of tentative, the word tentative is another concept. And you can link them with is, or you can link them with is not.
Right.
See?
Okay.
So
Wow.
scientific process is tentative, is correct. Scientific process is not tentative, is incorrect.
Yeah.
The algorithm picks that up and scores that a 1 or a 0.
It's kind of also it's kind of also testing the strength of language as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So you need to know what tentative means.
Exactly.
So
Is there-
that's
there-
the limitation there.
They can,
Yeah.
but they can look that up. Obviously, can they look that up?
Yeah, they can. I guess they could.
Like, is this survey, this map, where like what's the process? They finish the event, then they do fill out the survey straight away, or do they go home and have a few beers and then do the survey?
So when I have so I've tested it, but not with science events. I've done a control group,
Okay.
and so I asked people to do this I guess activity of making a concept map, and then a week later I got them to do it again with
Okay.
nothing in between. That's
Yep,
the
yep.
control. There's nothing that they would have done essentially that would have changed their answers.
Right.
And so I get them to do it before and after
Yeah.
nothing at this point, but soon hopefully I'll get them to do it maybe a day or a couple days before an event, and then a couple days after the
Yeah.
event. I
I'd
just
like to
send them
do
a
this.
link. Basically,
yeah,
it's
hard
just
to
a
get
link.
people to reply to links.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that awesome thing in science with response rates. And
How
20%
come you filled
is
ours out?
actually good.
How did
Yeah.
you fill our questionnaire out?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, I kind of had forgotten that I did that. I think it was just it came into my inbox and I was probably trying to procrastinate.
I think you were when what's his name, the head of geology, Van
Kranendonk,
yes.
Martin.
Yeah, I met with him and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'll send it to a few people," and you must have been one of the people.
Yeah,
that
he's
sent
my co-supervisor. So
yes.
he's he did send it to me.
it. Yeah, okay. I was like, yeah, because
Legend.
you weren't a geological.
Geology, like,
like-
it was a random. It was
No.
random.
We
We're
were
like,
like, what's this?
where'd this
Yeah,
come from?
so it's interesting because usually people who study science communication are in the social sciences. I'm actually in the Faculty of Science in the Australian Centre for Astrobiology, which is a weird place maybe to have a science communication PhD happening, but I think it's exactly where
Oh yeah.
it should be. Science communication should be embedded
Yeah.
in science and not as a social
You need
science.
PR. It's like PR. It's like the delivery of science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, how can you be a good science communicator if you don't actually, you know what? A
Cannot.
lot of science communicators who aren't scientists but only do the communication of
Yeah.
science, I'd say a lot of them are probably what, the measure of scientific literacy, they're probably not that scientifically
Yeah,
exactly.
literate
And that's
because they haven't themselves had that experience of doing science. I'm surrounded by people who do science all day long,
yeah.
and I'm embedded in that, and that makes me, I think, a better science communicator.
Of course.
yeah.
Of course.
Because you see how different people describe the same things, which will give you insight into what's probably going to confuse people.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens half the time. So this thing keeps choking me. Maybe I should just shut up. I haven't said anything of much value, so I might as well just shut up. But now I forgot what I was going to say, and I had something of value to say. I think. Oh yeah. Actually, yeah. When you're at uni and you see something in one book, and then you see something in another book, That's a different symbol, a different word. Same natural phenomena, same like it's gravity or it's pressure, but it's just described differently in two different textbooks. And then instead of having one thing to worry about, you have two things to worry about in your head. So now it becomes a memory issue, not a literacy issue.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember two things.
Yeah.
And I struggle enough with people's names.
But even just, I mean, I get to go to, so I hang out with astrobiologists. And astrobiologists, yeah, you know, that's just what I do. But they are studying the origins of, it's so cool. They study the origins of life on Earth. How did life start? Where did it start? What was the chemical process involved? All that. This is what they study. Most of them are geologists because, you know, that evidence lies in fossils.
of course.
Rocks.
And then they get to apply the knowledge that they gain from their research here on Earth of how life started and where it started and apply that to our search for life on Mars and elsewhere in the universe. But a lot of the people I work with
So do you work with
work
James?
with NASA and stuff.
Do you work with James?
Have you met James?
Bevington?
James. No.
Okay.
You should
But I
meet.
need to.
Yeah.
You guys should
I
meet.
know.
He's pretty switched on too.
Yeah.
He's got a mohawk and he's pretty funny.
It's really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, he's out there.
Cool.
He did. He was at High Seas. He went on that.
The hot-
Speaking
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
he was
yeah.
on that. He was part of that. So he was on. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Cool
Yeah,
stuff, man.
and his experiments going up in a SpaceX rocket in June. I think I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, SpaceX rocket in June.
And he's studying
yeah.
why there's excess methane on Mars.
Someday, I wanna wear a starry crown.
Someday, I wanna lay down like God did on Sunday. Sundays, I remember 3 songs. Sundays, that way, yeah, way, that day.
Is there life on Mars?
We gotta refilm it. We'll probably get him on again, like as his journey. Hopefully, we can get a lot of people on again,
Yeah.
and see them progress. You know, as they do more things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Flesh it
So
out.
he's sending an experiment on a SpaceX.
In a 10 by 10 centimeter, 10 by 10 by 10,
onto ISS.
Yeah.
onto the ISS.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we thought there was a party happening on the ISS. There's only
Yeah,
6 people.
6 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was like Star Trek.
I thought there was
Nah.
like 600.
No.
I thought it was just party in space.
No, it's tiny.
Yeah, it's nothing, eh?
No,
That's
That
shit.
sucks. That really
we need
sucks.
to just
There's no money.
expand.
Who's gonna pay for
expand
it?
it.
So who's
Bigger.
is there anyone else at UNSW or anyone actually that you know doing a similar thing to what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, yeah. So my friend Yiling Wang.
Yeah, you probably know
is-
them all.
Yeah, she's looking at trust actually. So public trust in science and scientists, which is so interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. You
So
guys should talk
is
to
that
her.
if you? Yeah, we should. So that is if you trust someone, you're more likely to internalize their data that they're giving you.
And listen to them.
yeah.
That's what it
And
is.
so
eh? It's all
she's looking at
consciousness.
social media and how science. I mean, a lot of scientists are trying to do science communication on social media to, you know, one, talk about the research, but two, even sometimes like sway people, especially with climate change. You know, a lot of climate scientists want to make the point that we need to do something, and then there's so many people who don't even believe in climate
There's so many
change.
mixed views.
And how do we gain people's trust in science and scientists and what we're doing so that, you know, we can save our planet?
Yeah.
So that's what she's doing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
That's cool.
mad.
So do you work closely with her? Do you work closely with her or not really?
We're good buddies.
Cool. Yeah.
We just
Coffee when you need
yeah,
a
we
procrastinate.
just
Bounce-
talk
you
all the
bounce
time
ideas
and
off each
yeah,
other. Yeah, it's the best.
I mean, our projects don't overlap, so I guess that's why I'm saying like don't work with her,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But could you
We hang out all the
incorporate
time.
maybe
Sure
some of
there's
her
overlap.
findings
Oh,
in
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
I'm sure she's inspiring her
likewise.
as she types.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ari inspires me all the time.
You inspire me, man.
Yeah, all the time, Ari.
Oh.
You inspire each
So beautiful.
Yeah, we inspire each other.
Yeah, it inspires me, but also pisses me off a lot.
You
Yeah.
should have said me before. I was going off at you.
I asked him to get me beer, and he every time I ask him to get me something, he has to ask me, what eggs? What beer do you want? What wine do you want? So what's the point of me telling you?
Because
He
you
just
want
wants
all,
to please you.
because you want organic eggs, mate.
Yeah, you get organic eggs.
$9.79 for 12 eggs.
Yeah.
Good
That's some
eggs.
serious.
I don't want.
But
I
think
don't
of the happy chickens.
Yeah.
Exactly. Happy chickens.
I even like. Yeah, I totally agree. Chickens should be happy. I don't even think they're going to be happy if they're organic chickens. But even just like the reduced hormones and the reduced smelliness of them and stuff. Like, come on. Eggs are. I'm very picky with eggs. They're quite yucky sometimes. Like that's the smell.
Yeah.
Oh.
Fair enough,
Oh,
mate.
I hate it. And when you get cups that smell like egg.
What?
You know, you get cups in restaurants.
Oh,
that smell
yeah,
like
yeah,
eggs?
yeah.
No.
That's
Yeah,
bad.
like
Sometimes.
those bar cups.
Yeah.
That
I don't know if I've ever encountered that.
yeah, it's disgusting. You should have. As I'm surprised.
Maybe you just didn't notice.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Maybe you're. No, but this guy's very sensitive. He's very.
sensitive guy.
Yeah. He's not tolerable to certain things. Like my sister. If something's too
Yeah, 'cause
sweet, she won't eat it.
You're super happy-go-lucky.
I'm pretty happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, actually you are. He's a bear. He's a big bear.
Yeah.
All right, we digress.
We digress always.
Okay, so yeah, you measure these people using the survey, and
Yeah.
you just found out that their scientific literacy went down.
Yeah.
And then you've got
and-
two things, the survey and the digital
Why?
map.
But that's the thing is, after I saw that, I thought, well, the first thing I thought was, whoops, I made a mistake. Let's go back. And then when I realized I had made a mistake, I thought, wow, I'm crap at my job. But after I kind of got through that, I thought, no, actually, I don't have a lot of confidence in surveys in general. I'm going to come up with my own way. So, yeah, I'm hoping that when I do use this instrument, that it is more sensitive and more precise. I mean, it's the difference between saying to someone, go outside and tell me what the temperature is and report back, or taking a thermometer outside and measuring the
Yourself.
temperature, right? So one's more precise than the other. Even though you get a feel for it, one's more precise, and that's what I hope my instrument will be, is a more precise way of measuring. And through that, I don't think that I'll see the same decline. I think that the decline, I mean, you have to put it in context. It was one study. So you should never just think that
Right.
one study
Oh, of course.
is, right? So it was one study on a smallish sample of, close to 100 people. It could have just been a fluke. So I don't want to draw any conclusions, but that is what I saw, and I wonder, is that what I'll see again? And
With the high school students.
Yeah, with the high school
So
students.
what are you actually
and
doing?
with
Why? Hold on.
the rest of the
Why do you
public.
think they got dumber? Probably not politically correct.
Just because I think we reinforced those misconceptions.
Because it just not because we purposely did it.
No, not
Just
on
chose the
purpose.
wrong words.
So for example, if someone gets up in front of a group of 300 people, they're a good communicator, they're confident, they're enthusiastic, all that. I mean, they're going to talk about what they found in their research. Of course they will. But the way that we present those findings with confidence is probably reinforcing the misconception that science is
Absolute.
absolute,
It's not.
right? So it's just in the way that we're presenting these findings that I
The
think,
framing.
yeah,
Yeah.
And that's reassuring people's biases, or is it making them scared of the information and then sticking to their guns, or is it fear? Is it just false confidence?
No, I think it's more like, for example, that example that I gave earlier, that statement about all observations will be the same because observations are facts. Let's say, I mean, I can't exactly remember the numbers, but let's say about 70% of people thought that was incorrect, which is good because it is incorrect, before the event. Then this person talks about, this amazing scientist who's doing really great stuff, talks about their research and the findings and that, and, because of these findings, we think this, this, and this. After the event, the people who thought that that was incorrect actually increased or actually decreased.
Oh, so the people that thought
They were like, oh, yeah.
Observations
are facts.
Yeah.
Because that person, when they found those things, that was a fact.
it's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just you pick the data points that are going to confirm your biases.
And just the way that we're talking about the science
Yeah.
kind of makes it
Do you think it's an inability to
reinforce
ask
those.
ask questions?
Dreams that you had you
I think if we just made small tweaks, for example, if a scientist said, just like I actually did, yes, I found a decrease, but that is one study, and we can't confirm that in one study. And so I need to go back and do more studies with more people to see if I still get this decrease. That is me telling everyone listening that there's uncertainty and that you should take everything that comes out of science with,
Grain of salt.
a grain of salt. That we're self-correcting. That's what science is, self-correcting. So I saw this, I observed this. I think there's a reason for it, but it's not sure. And I can't draw an absolute conclusion that when you go to a science event, you're going to come out less informed. I can't make that conclusion. But you may. But I need to do more research.
Yeah, of course.
If scientists talked about the research in that way,
Exactly, yeah.
including the tentative, including the uncertainty, including, just being more transparent about the process, then people would walk out of there going, actually, maybe observations aren't facts.
What the fuck? Ah!
You want certainty.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And that comes back to educating young people in a way where if they get to experience actually doing science, they'll know that.
Yeah.
They'll know there's
They'll
uncertainty.
know. I mean,
Don't
when
shelter them.
Yeah.
Don't shelter
So
them.
for example, when I worked with the Mars Lab, like I was saying, I interviewed some students after they presented to the scientists. And some of the students said to me, the really cool thing about doing this project is that there wasn't one right answer.
Yeah.
And after all that work we did, we still don't know if our interpretation, so they actually use the word interpretation, not our answer. Our interpretation, how we see it, is right. And it brought up so many more questions. And they said, now we understand why some people can spend their whole lives studying one thing, because the more you find out, the more questions it brings up, and it's all so.
You can't put a full stop on anything.
That's right. But these young people were in year 9. They got it, but they only got it because they experienced it themselves.
Yeah.
So if we let people play baseball when they're young, they will get it.
But then you need heaps of baseball bats and that.
Yeah, costs a lot of money. You got to give them more experience.
Yeah, it's the problem. We can't treat each brain as a unique brain at the moment. Like that's hopefully the next frontier.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So from your findings,
But I want to be able to download people's.
Oh yeah. Don't
I
worry,
know
we're
that
working.
sounds awful.
Yeah.
It
We're
actually
working
sounds
on it.
awful.
If they
but
let you,
that if they let you, it's just I just want to. I mean, when you want to know what someone has learned or what someone knows, there is no other way than asking them, and it's so inefficient. It's not. I just want to.
But then, how do you
pull
download
it
it
out.
as? Do we download it as words,
a mind map.
or will you download it? Would it be
Mind
words?
map.
Mind map.
A crazy mind map. 3D
Yeah,
mind
you
map.
love mind maps
Because
But
they're the best way.
What if it was like? Would you download the emotion or the? Because isn't your
Oh, that's very
like,
clever.
what
the
data?
emotion.
Because all it is emotions.
It's all about
It's
emotion.
all about emotion.
It's all about.
So instead of saying, "Hey, how are you? I'm good," I'll say, "I'm good," and I'll just give you my dopamine levels,
Exactly.
my serotonin levels,
right.
and then you'll get it.
How often though do you say, "Oh yeah, I'm good," but you're not?
Yeah, you're
Of
not.
course.
Yeah, but you can still lie. So you can say good and then give
Yeah.
them heaps of dopamine, heaps of serotonin. But would that mean that people can give you drugs technically?
Mm.
And you, every time you ask someone how they are, you're in a serious conversation. Heaps of oxytocin. Block this guy. But I'm sure we'll have to figure out. You'd have to figure out like Norton internet security for your head.
Maybe you
Lace.
have to scan the brain.
Yeah, like there'd have to be a way for you
I
to
don't know how
stop.
you
I
do
mean,
this.
with our, we can scan people's brains to see. There are people who.
What are they measuring? Is it amps or like electric current right
Yeah,
now?
they're
Yeah.
they're
Current.
using electric
Yeah.
current
Exactly.
to see
As the
when you're
metric.
doing this, what parts of your brain are active. We're partially doing that. We're on our way.
That's But then, what's the next thing you'd want to be able to download off the brain? Would it be words or would it be like chemical composition?
Which would
Like,
go
what would you
to-
download? Like on the paper, you click download off the brain. Like what do you get?
Oh man, I don't know.
What would you want to get?
a mind map
Would you want to get
A mind map or pictures?
Yeah.
of words of what they
of
know?
what they know? Yeah.
I think it'd have to be. I think that's actually. Does everyone think I draw an image?
So, well, images would be really interesting because words, language, and like you brought up earlier, language shapes the way you think.
Yeah.
And there are some languages that don't have certain words for certain emotions and so they don't
They break down.
have that experience because they can't think of it in those terms, right? So I think downloading someone's brain into words would be very limiting.
Yeah, what language?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Probably
Yeah, you
Chinese
need-
at the
you
current
need-
rate.
We need images for sure.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if you have an image in your head and you learnt it from words, it probably means that you were a bit more critical about those words, so you turned it into an image. But if you couldn't turn it into an image, then you probably don't really understand what you've learnt. So you get what I'm saying?
No.
I mean, when I learn about oil and gas, I have this reservoir in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I've drawn it in my head. And when I learn more information about getting oil out of the ground, I put it in that reservoir.
You're a visual learner.
Yeah,
though.
definitely.
Yeah.
If I don't understand what I'm learning, then I haven't put it in my image. So it's sort of sitting in my brain outside the current image I have of an oil reservoir.
Yeah.
Until I understand that, I go, oh, okay. Then I click it into the image, and now I've got the image. And now no matter how you frame that topic, I'll be able to understand it. But unless you frame it in the way I've memorized it before it goes into the image,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. So some people though, I'm a visual learner too,
Yeah.
so I learn how you do. Some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic.
Yeah.
And so you would almost need to download things in multiple representations
many
and
files.
then link it together to get a full picture.
Yeah, and you might get different files. You might get the information about his 6-year-old John is an image file, and when he got a lobotomy after that, everything's downloaded in a Word document. Like you could get multiple files.
Yeah.
This
And then you need to put in the AI and it will decipher
imagine
it
the
all for
first version of like the downloadable brain, like the first time, that beta version. It'd be shit.
It'd be like a floppy disk.
Yeah, it'd
Yeah.
be so bad.
you.
Yeah, it'd
Ones
be-
and zeros.
Yeah, it'd just be yeah. It'd be cool, but that's probably it might be your invention.
Yeah. That's part of our.
I think I need to think about it a bit more around the ethics of it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, as
is
a
anything-
researcher for what I'm doing right now, it sounds really great, but also ethically, there's so many
Or you could
They
just
need
no-nos
to
that
fully
go
consent.
hand in hand with this.
yeah. But I mean, hopefully by the time you get there, we've evolved enough to realize, or our ethics have evolved enough to reflect the times we're in.
Yeah.
Because right
And
now we can't. Yeah.
And the necessities.
Is it 4:30?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
shit. Oh no.
Where's
Whoa,
your-
I can understand now why your
5
last,
hours.
Yeah, 5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Oops.
shit.
Let's, wrap it
Yeah,
up.
we'll wrap it up.
All right. Yeah. So
Do you want to
wanna
say anything to anyone? Because we got Klaus last time to shout out to the head of renewable energy to get him on board. I don't know. Do you want to say anything to anyone?
what's the future of education need to look like tomorrow for us to head towards a place where, you know, we're not just memorizing stuff.
Yeah. If I could change education tomorrow, I'd buy a crap load of baseball bats.
And just hit people.
We need, I mean, that's where it starts. The
Yeah.
whole issue, the whole thing about scientific literacy,
telescopes.
it starts with the young people, and especially in primary school. And if we can get young people to actually play baseball,
Yeah.
so actually do science, real science, not just fun hands-on experiments
Yeah.
that aren't actually really doing science. If we actually get them to do science and to ask their own questions, they're going to grow up understanding science,
Yeah.
understanding how it works. And I think that will improve scientific literacy, which is really important to society.
Yeah,
For sure. Te será pender.